And hi, this is Paul Gibbons. I'm here to briefly talk about what's inside the brand new book, Change Myths, that came out in April of 2023. The backdrop for the book is much bigger than just change management. In the information age, we run across something called information disorder. We have a plurality of sources of information today. That's a great gift to us, this what we call democratization of information sources. But also that creates for us an accuracy problem. It's hard to trust everything that we read. And so that applies to change. We need a way of applying critical thinking in our lives. Information disorder affects nutrition, it affects public health, it affects vaccination, and it affects climate change, it affects our politics, it affects parenting practices. And so we need a way today in the information age to parse information well. And so we have in the book a framework called LIAR, which comes from philosophy: logic, intuition, authority, and research. Either something makes sense logically, the premises add up to the conclusion, either it jibes with our intuition, either it has considerable authority behind it, or either it's substantiated by research. Sometimes these things agree, more often they disagree. So let's move into the change book, and here are the chapters. Is change like dying? The DABDA, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance model. Let's understand LIAR a bit further. Is Myers-Briggs a multi-billion-dollar scam? Is resistance to change a harmful way of thinking about change? How about learning styles? Do they affect learning outcomes? Is burning platforms a useful metaphor for change leaders? We say no, it's harmful. And is neuroscience just another way of people using multisyllable words trying to sound smart? We then look at how evidence can be used to substantiate claims in change management, and we look at some sources of BS in the world of change management. Let's show you how LIAR works on something called learning style, something I learned, day one of my learning as a change consultant, and that I taught for 20 years as a so-called expert in this subject. So our intuition tells us that we have preferences. That's unarguably true. It's also trivial that human beings have preferred ways of learning. They've been taught, authority tells us, going back to the 1970s and even back to Greek thinkers. However, just because someone declares themselves to be a visual learner does not mean they learn faster visually. That's called the so-called matching hypothesis, that if you match content to someone's preference, they will learn better or faster. That research has shown to be false. And then the final question with logic that will help us understand is, if someone's, say, a soccer player and you're their coach and they prefer being right-footed, do you serve them, or do you want to challenge them to use their left or their head, or become a more better rounded soccer player? And that applies to learning too. In the world today, even though I may prefer to take my information from text and you may prefer it in auditory and another person may prefer it in visual form, you have to be a multimodal learner today. And so we don't think that you're necessarily serving the interests of the learner if you present to them content in accord with their preference. And then finally, one of the things that we open the book with is denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. It was the thing that I learned on day one, minute one of my first course in change management. Is it an accurate depiction of what the dying go through? And even if the dying people go through something that's as scripted as this, which is false, does that apply to loss generally? And even if it applies to loss generally, does it apply to change specifically? Does it apply to the experiences of the third floor IT department that's going through a reorganization? Maybe, maybe not. Not likely. Does having a template such as this help you or hurt your ability to empathize and relate to people? We say it hurts and make arguments that may or may not persuade you that that's true. And what about other ways that people learn and change? What about other shapes of the curve? We've all started change with a burst of enthusiasm and then having that wane. And then when the enthusiasm wanes, our effort tends to wane. And when that wanes, we produce fewer results. That's something that afflicts dieters. They can frequently get 5 or 10 pounds off, but keeping them off and getting the next 5 or 10 is tricky. And so there are multiple different ways that people experience change. There are multiple people with different shapes of the learning curve for information. And this is a poor one. and it's not the only one, even though it's frequently taught as such. And so that's the book. We hope that you'll rush out and buy a copy on Amazon.com. Maybe leave us a 2-line review on Amazon.com. I hope you enjoy the video.